Hello everyone, and welcome to our video on Xerxes and the Daivas inscription. If you'd like a moment to read through the whole inscription, pause the video here. In this video, we will discuss the political and theological purposes of the Daivas inscription of Xerxes I. We will also discuss what Daivas are. It is a trilingual inscription found in multiple locations throughout the Achaemenid Empire, notably in Persepolis and Pasargadae. As noted by Kurt, it is a commemorative foundation document. The inscription is in Old Persian, Achaemenid, Elamite, and Late Babylonian. Trilingual inscriptions were typical of Darius the Great, which carried on into Xerxes' reign. Xerxes' father, Darius the Great, was not a direct successor to the throne, but rather a usurper of Bardia, the son of Cyrus the Great. This made proving legitimacy to the throne even more important. Xerxes succeeded to the throne after Darius' death in 486 BCE. He reigned for 21 years until his assassination by Artabanus in 465 BCE.
This is silent noise.
Moving on to the political purpose of the inscription, I've identified 5 key components that help convey Xerxes' intentions. First, the inscription serves to reinforce Xerxes' legitimacy as king. Following a turbulent succession, he needed to establish his right to rule across the vast empire. By emphasizing that his kingship was granted by Ahura Mazda, Xerxes presents himself as divinely chosen, making it clear that his authority is not only political but sacred. This association with divine favor was a key strategy to stabilize his rule and secure acceptance across the empire. Second, the inscription aims to consolidate imperial control. With an empire as large as the Achaemenid realm, listing the many conquered nations like Media, Elam, Babylonia, and Assyria was essential. This list isn't just ceremonial, it reinforces that even amid rebellion, especially in places like Egypt and Babylon, Xerxes was able to maintain order. As the inscription notes, they did what was said to them, underscoring that Xerxes' authority was respected and unchallenged across these lands. Third, Xerxes addresses internal unrest directly. Egypt and Babylon, historically problematic regions, had resisted both his rule and his father's. By stating that he restored order with Ahura Mazda's support, Xerxes frames himself as a capable and decisive leader, reassuring both his subjects and elites that the Achaemenid administration was strong enough to suppress disorder. As scholar Deegan notes, any sort of political resistance was perceived as an act of rebellion against the only legitimate power in the world, namely the Great King. Fourth, the inscription promotes religious reform. Xerxes emphasizes his commitment to Zoroastrianism by highlighting the destruction of the Daivas, or false gods. This action presents him as a religious reformer, likely consolidating support among Zoroastrian elites and asserting moral authority over regions with differing religious practices. By challenging the Daivas, Xerxes attempts to centralize and unify religious practices across the empire. Finally, the inscription projects power not only within the empire but beyond it. Xerxes' declaration of dominance over many nations projects an image of himself as a universal monarch. This would have been particularly significant in the international context, especially given his conflicts with Greece and the prestige he saw among rival powers like the Greek city-states and others on the empire's border.
The theological purpose of the inscription is to present Xerxes as ruling with the protection and favour of Ahura Mazda, whose reign is both a part of creation and a terrestrial reflection of the supreme god's power. Persian kingship is the position through which Ahura Mazda brings peace and stability, a concept which was itself influenced by communications of spiritual power by their subjects' former rulers. Xerxes' position as one king of many, listed as created alongside heaven, earth and humanity by Ahura Mazda, is, in de Jong's view, meant to show how the building of the Persian Empire reflects Ahura Mazda's creation of the world, whose inhabitants the Achaemenids bring order to. The same god brought blissful happiness to mankind, which according to Suhail reflects a Zoroastrian belief that Ahura Mazda created happiness, whilst pain and sorrow were created by his opponent Angra Mainyu, an agent of disorder. As king, through the peace and stability guaranteed by imperial might, his empire is happy and evil is kept at bay. The inscription's frequent references to Ahura Mazda's favour, seen as expressed through tributes brought by the king's subjects and in victory, are, as Kurt writes, reminiscent of motifs of political and spiritual power, expressed by Mesopotamian rulers, given to them by Ashur and Shamash. Thus, Persian rulers were employing motifs of power well known to their subjects. The inscription includes a prayer for the protection of Xerxes and his dynasty, which, in Bryant's view, is an example of religion in the Persian Empire being bound up with the well-being and stability of the royal house and the land it controlled. Taken together, the inscription presents Xerxes as occupying an intermediary position between humanity and the divine, and, as a result, wields power bestowed on him by Ahura Mazda to bring security, peace and bliss, at the expense of chaos and disorder. As a king with divine favour, his enemies would thus be seen as not just earthly adversaries, but also agents of evil, represented by the Daivas, enemies of Ahura Mazda.
In this inscription, there are 3 mentions of Daivas. These individuals seem to be a common theme in Xerxes' inscription, and we can see firsthand a negative impression given of them. The Daivas mentioned referred to supernatural beings deriving from the Zoroastrian tradition, also known as false gods. In Old Persian, meaning Xerxes' impression, Daivas is seen as divinities associated with evil, disorder, and chaos. Xerxes gives a negative insight into Daivas and gives the impression that he dislikes and perhaps fears them. Through analysing the inscription, we can gather and assume in some areas Daivas would have been worshipped, as like other gods. The inscription states, "I destroyed the place of the Daivas, and I gave orders, the Daivas shall not be worshipped any longer." The places in which worship of the Daivas took place would have been seen as rebellious lands. Through Xerxes' attitude towards the Daivas, we can gather a sense of what attitudes and rejections were like towards atypical religions and worships during the time.
Furthermore, within the inscription, Xerxes proclaims that it is aimed to eradicate the worship of Daivas, as mentioned in the previous quotation. This signifies that Xerxes was seeking to legitimize and purify his reign through eliminating the influence of the Daivas due to their association with chaos and being seen as almost the antithesis of the deities. The quote from the inscription, "Wherever formerly the Daivas have been worshipped, there I worshipped Ahura Mazda at the proper time and with the proper ceremony," emphasizes how Xerxes saw their presence as a threat and wanted to eliminate their influence in order to focus the worship onto Ahura Mazda instead. This would subsequently solidify his reign, as he would be seen as being chosen by Ahura Mazda to rule, which would legitimize his authority. Overall, the Daivas are shown in a negative light within this inscription, and Xerxes' intentions are made very clear that he aimed to eradicate the Daivas and their influence.
In conclusion, Xerxes I's Daiva inscription serves as both a theological statement and a political declaration. Theologically, he emphasizes his devotion to Ahura Mazda, reinforcing Zoroastrianism as the guiding religion and positioning the king as protector of divine order. Politically, Xerxes denounces the worship of the Daivas and presents his role in purging their influence as a legitimate reason for his authority. This strengthens his rule by portraying him as both moral and political leader, connecting divine approval with his imperial power, and aligning his policies with sacred duty to uphold truth and order within the empire.